Do you love silver bullet toolbox styles of play? Do you have trouble deciding what to sideboard out in between games? Do you think, contrary to popular belief, that green can be a creative colour? Then Mono Green Tutor Walkers might just be the deck for you. Mono Green Tutor Walkers, or Mono Green Karn, or new and arguably improved Mono Green Devotion, is a pioneer deck that says no to sideboarding and yes to 4 of both Karn the Great Creator and Vivien Arkbow Ranger, in order to pull silver bullets out of your sideboard for any matchup while ramping those out in a fairly typical Devotion shell. I found this deck on Twitter, posted by fellow MTG content creator Aspiring Spike, who mostly does Twitch streams and was recently partnered, I do believe, but also posts to YouTube a little bit and has recently recorded a full league with this deck. So if you're interested in watching some more of this deck, then I will link to his video in the description box below and you can go and click on that, although ideally maybe do that after you've watched this one, please. The YouTube algorithm rewards audience retention, so I probably should have just put this bit at the end of the video. But it's very important to credit your sources where possible, and in the spirit of that, Aspiring Spike does accredit this list to one of their viewers called Austin Ables, or MTG Maestro on Magic Online, who isn't a content creator, but I will link to their Twitter in the description. Anyway, now that I've bored you with some ethical referencing, let's get on with the games. Although before we do, actually, I do just want to say that over the next few deck tech style videos that I'll be doing, I'm trying a few different ways of recording, and I would like your feedback on what you prefer to watch. So today I'll be commentating over a recording of the games that I played last night, so things are edited down a little bit for the sake of timeliness and pacing, and I have the benefit of hindsight while recording. Although naturally this does mean that you don't get sort of my stream of consciousness live thoughts as I have them. So let me know what you think of it and I'll change and update my format based on that feedback. Thank you very much, let's get on with those games. Okay, so in game 1 we keep a hand of 3 forests, 2 Wolfwillow Havens, Nissa who shakes the world, and a Voracious Hydra. This is a slower, sort of less explosive hand than normally I would like to keep, but it's one of our first games with the deck, we don't know what we're playing against. But honestly, maybe this should be a mull. I just thought, you know, Nissa's really good, Voracious Hydras are very good in creature matchups, so let's keep it and see what happens. Our opponent plays a Yavimaya Coast, which tells us that they are probably on the Lotus Breach decks, because that's one of the only decks in the format right now that plays Yavimaya Coast. On turn 2 they play a Sylvan Scrying after we play a Wolfwillow Haven, finding a Thespian Stage, and that tells us yes, they're definitely on the Lotus Breach deck. That's really a shame because we don't have any of the tutors in our hand, so we can't really do much. So on turn 3 we're just playing a Voracious Hydra, X=2, doubling the counters on that. Just trying to get a creature on the board that can provide a clock as quickly as possible. We know we don't really have any way of slowing them down, so we need to try our best to speed up. They play a Lotus Field, sacking both of the Yavimaya Coasts, and as we go into our turn 4 here, I believe we're just going to slam a Nissa on the board, animate a land, and get in for 7. And then after we've gotten in for our 7, we've still got 2 leftover mana from the land that we untapped with Nissa, so we can cast another Wolfwillow Haven and just guarantee that we've got a lot of mana for the next turn. On their turn 4, they start doing some shenanigans with the Vizier of Tumbling Sands and everything gets a little bit worrying, but I believe basically the outcome of this turn is that they turn their Thespian Stage into a Lotus Field, play a Thassa's Oracle, and then they use a blink of an eye to bounce the Hydra back to our hand. So that's slightly annoying, obviously slows us down slightly. We wouldn't have had lethal even if we had kept that Hydra on the board, we would have only had 10 points of damage. But either way, we swing in for 6 here with 2 animated lands, and we've got lethal next turn, but passing over to the Lotus Field deck with 2 Lotus Fields is always a very sort of scary place to be. It's usually where they have it. They kind of just need an Underworld Breach or something in hand. I forget about Wolfwillow Haven's ability. Wolfwillow Haven says that you can only activate it on your turn at any time that you could play a sorcery. So I tap out completely, trying to sack my Wolfwillow Havens just for an extra 2 wolves, I guess, in case that's relevant at all to what they're doing. Forget that I can't do that. They play Underworld Breach, and this means that they've probably got it, but I let them play it out just a little bit. As soon as they reveal a Tome Scour from the Fae of Wishes, I concede, because that's the point. They can mill out their entire deck, and it's all over from there. we don't sideboard anything, that's the point of the deck. We see an opening hand with only one land, that's a Castle Garenbrig, so that's definitely a mull, but our second hand is actually really good. We keep this 6, putting one of the Vivien Arkbow Rangers back on bottom, because you don't really need 2. And this is a fantastic hand. We can go turn 1 Elvish Mystic into turn 2 Burning-Tree Emissary and Wolfwillow Haven. However, we could have, on this turn, we could have played Burning-Tree Emissary and Wolfwillow Haven, but instead we don't. I forgot, I missequenced. Really, we should have had a Burning-Tree Emissary on the board here. I think I just got too excited about casting 2 Wolfwillow Havens in the same turn. So as a result, we miss out on 2 points of damage on this turn coming up now. But here's the turn we get to drop our Vivien, and this means that we can tutor for something next turn. Now, the things that Vivien can pull that are relevant against this deck, I think are pretty much just the Eldrazi Titans. We can get an Emrakul, the Promised End, and control their turn, which is obviously really good but costs 13 mana, so that's quite a lot. Or we can get a Ulamog, which can exile their permanents. That's no good if they've got a Lotus Field down, which they've just played, because the Lotus Field, of course, does have hexproof. So this means that we're probably on the Emrakul plan. We count up our mana here, and by count it up, I mean we just tap out, see how much mana we can produce, and we can only produce a maximum of 11 mana this turn. That's not really going to get us anywhere. So we just uptick the Vivien again and get in for some damage. An interesting interaction here, if I was going to -5 the Vivien on that turn, that would obviously kill the Vivien. So make sure that you tap your Nykthos for mana before you do that, otherwise your devotion is going to drop by 3 once you -5 the Vivien, and that's not going to be very good. Our opponent worries us by playing a Thespian Stage and casting Hidden Strings, but again this just ends up being a blink of an eye turn. We draw Burning-Tree Emissary. Because they blink of an eyed our Elvish Mystic, we actually couldn't get to 13 mana this turn, but because we drew the Burning-Tree Emissary, this means that we can actually get to our 13 devotion. Which is, or 13 mana I should say, which is fantastic. So we pull a Emrakul out of our sideboard and slam it on the field against our opponent. And in a second you're going to see what hand we had, or what hand our opponent had, and what we've got to play with. Obviously there is a lot that you can do against the Underworld Breach deck. It's very much a deck that plays through its entire deck, and it has a lot of ways of messing itself up. So we see Fae of Wishes, Ratchet Bomb, 2 copies of Underworld Breach, and they drew and Unravel the Aether for that turn. So I have some ideas about what I want to do here, but I will say in hindsight, what I could have done and what I probably should have done to get a guaranteed win is just use their exact combo against them. So I could have tapped both of the Lotus Fields, one for blue, one for red, played Underworld Breach, cast the Hidden Strings from their graveyard to untap their lands, get some more mana, use the Granted from Fae of Wishes to go get Tome Scour, and then just combo off. Just use their deck to combo off, do the exact same thing it wants to be doing, mill through their entire deck, but then instead of casting a Thassa's Oracle or a Jace Wielder of Mysteries at the end of the game, just casting a draw spell, forcing them to draw, mill themselves out, and lose the game. However, I didn't see that line when I was playing, and so instead I try and waste as many resources as possible. And even that I kind of misplay a little bit, because I forget about the fact that Underworld Breach forces you to exile 3 cards from your library when you cast the thing. So what I am trying to do here is I'm trying to produce enough mana that the Thespian Stage can become a copy of my Nykthos trying to Nyx. Then we can cast the Sylvan Scrying from the library, find another Lotus Field, play that Lotus Field, sacrificing both Lotus Fields, and that would leave them with just a Thespian Stage that is a copy of Nykthos, so absolutely no good whatsoever, and then just waste as many cards from their hand as possible. As I say though, I do forget about the escape cost of exiling cards from the graveyard, so I'm not able to do that. So instead what I end up doing is playing out 1 Underworld Breach, exiling some cards from the library, and casting Unravel the Aether on that Underworld Breach, just to stop cards from going to their graveyard and fueling the next Underworld Breach. So it's not the best play in the world, it's not what I was trying to do, but it does end up getting the job done, because on their turn they play a Ratchet Bomb, realise it won't actually blow anything up. We've got way and above more points than lethal on the board, they can't do anything, so they concede and we go to game 3. Once again, we don't sideboard. In game 3, our opening hand is pretty fantastic. We've got 2 lands. We've got Wolfwillow Haven, we've got Burning-Tree Emissary, Jadelight Ranger, Voracious Hydra, and our Karn, the Great Creator. Now our Karn is going to pull 2 really important cards from our sideboard. Damping Sphere obviously ruins their kind of storming off plans, and it also stops their Lotus field from tapping for any more than just 1 colourless mana. One thing I didn't know actually about Damping Sphere is the interaction with Wolfwillow Haven is that it doesn't actually stop our Wolfwillow Haven from working, because the land doesn't add the mana. The land doesn't add the mana when Wolfwillow Haven taps. It's actually the Wolfwillow Haven that adds it. So Damping Sphere still works, still lets you ramp out with Wolfwillow Haven there. Obviously won't help your Nyx. So we play our Burning-Tree Emissary into Wolfwillow Haven, sequencing things correctly this turn. We draw another Burning-Tree Emissary, which is pretty cool. It means that we can play it for free and then get our Karn down. And we want to get our Karn down straight away. I actually think I pull the Damping Sphere this turn. Really, I should have pulled Tormod's Crypt, because if they do threaten to go off next turn, then we can just exile their graveyard, and that will stop their Underworld Breach from being able to do anything, because they won't be able to pay the cost. But I pull the Damping Sphere, which ends up being fine because they're not able to go off on the next turn. But that is a slight misplay again. I should have pulled the Tormod's Crypt this turn, pulled the Damping Sphere next turn. I think I end up doing it the other way around. They cycle a Vizier of Tumbling Sands, untap their land, and it just seems like they're spinning their wheels a little bit. They have to Sylvan Scrying to go and find another copy of Thespian Stage, and they're going to, I believe, play that and then make a copy of Lotus Field. I am having to speed up or cut down their turns a little bit. So yeah, they spin their wheels a little bit with hidden strings and pore over the pages, but the end result is just that they cast a Granted and get an Underworld Breach, which means that they will be able to go off next turn, but that means very little to us because we're going to be able to drop our Damping Sphere and our Tormod's Crypt, and that is just going to completely shut down their game plan. We're going to play some big Jadelight Rangers and stuff like that, and just be able to kill them, and that's exactly what happens. They try and play their Fave Wishes as a blocker, but our Voracious Hydra just eats it, and then we're able to just continue pumping out the damage, and we've got so much disruption they really can't do anything. So that's match 1 over. We beat one of the big threats of the format. Feels pretty good. GG's, opponent. So in match 2, game 1, we win the die roll and keep an opening hand with 3 forests in Nykthos trying to Nyx, Voracious Hydra, Karn the Great Creator, and Wolfwillow Haven. Again, this one isn't particularly fast, not particularly explosive, but we can get out a turn 3 Karn or a turn 3 or 4 pretty big Voracious Hydra. And having the Nykthos in hand already, that does seem pretty cool. It means that our Karn could pull like a big artifact like Skysovereign or something like that, and we could cast that with relative ease. We draw an Elvish Mystic on turn 1. Our opponent leads on Temple Garden, which doesn't tell us a great deal about what they're playing, especially because they played it tapped and didn't play anything, so we don't exactly know. And then they enchant a Plains with a Wolfwillow Haven, and we're like, ooh, some kind of interesting mirror, who knows. We decide, I believe here, to go for the Elvish Mystic and Jadelight Ranger line because we don't want Karn out too early. We don't know what they would be tutoring for. We don't want them to be too vulnerable to removal yet. Our Jadelight Ranger reveals a Voracious Hydra on the top. We don't really need that, we've already got one. And a Nissa who shakes the world underneath that, which seems excellent. We can have a ton more mana, the lands attack, and that is relevant. And we've got obviously the Karn to pull out any silver bullets. Our opponent plays a Setessan champion, and suddenly we know what's going on. They're on some kind of green-white enchantress build. Maybe there's more colours, maybe not. Probably not. And in hindsight, actually, definitely not. So after a little bit of thinking and calculating, trying to figure out the best lines, because we've obviously got this Nissa, we've got the Untapped ability, we've got Wolfwillow Haven, we've got Elvish Mystic, we've got a lot of different ways to make mana. We decide to slam the Nissa on the table, uptick to animate and untap the Nykthos, get in for our points of damage. We know that they're not going to be blocking with a Setessan champion, but we also want that Setessan champion off the table, so we're going to drop a Hydra using the Nykthos to tap for a ton of mana. So this turn we have played 13 mana of threat on turn 4, I think that's pretty impressive, right? Anyway, our Voracious Hydra comes down, eats the Setessan champion, and already victory looks to be secured. Our opponent agrees, they concede. We go to the sideboard. We don't sideboard because sideboarding is for chumps, and we move into game 2. In game 2, our opening hand is 2 forests, Wolfwillow Haven, Burning-Tree Emissary, Voracious Hydra, Jadelight Ranger, and Nissa who shakes the world, which is pretty great. We can go for the good old turn 2 Burning-Tree Emissary into Wolfwillow Haven, get a Jadelight Ranger out the turn thereafter. We draw a forest as our first draw, so we can probably get to Nissa with one more draw of any sort of ramp and slash or just a land. Our opponent opens on a Mana Bloom, and we're like, wow, I've seen Mana Bloom played in EDH, but I didn't actually realise it was Pioneer legal, but Ravnica, original Return to Ravnica is this Mana Bloom. God, there is too many Ravnica sets. We draw an Elvish Mystic, so we can get to that Nissa so long as it's not removed in somewhere, but we slam the Burning Tree and then use the mana that it provides to cast the Wolfwillow Haven. Our opponent plays a Baffling End, exiling our Burning Tree Emissary. It looks like they're trying to cut down our devotion. I don't think they were too worried about the 1 point of damage that could come from it, but they probably are worried about the possibility of a Nykthos being in our hand. We don't have one though. But I can't blame them for being cautious. We slam a Jadelight Ranger and it reveals Llanowar Elves on top. We don't want that. We throw that into the graveyard and then a forest underneath that. So nice to filter our deck a little bit there. Jadelight Ranger, great card. We slam an Elvish Mystic, but we've got another land in hand anyway. Either way, we are getting Nissa who shakes the world down next turn. Our opponent cycles a cast out on their end step using the mana from their Mana Bloom. That means that on their upkeep, the Mana Bloom bounces back to their hand. This is the cool thing about Mana Bloom. Effectively, in an Enchantress build, you just pay green to draw a card once per turn, which is pretty neat, especially in an actual constructed, not EDH, not singleton format, I should say, where you can do that multiple times per turn if you've got them. We draw a Vivien Arkbow Ranger, which does seem like it would be pretty cool. So we're going to play a Nissa, animate a land, although we remember to do it the right way around, so that we animate the land first, attack with it. Then we can play the Vivien and use the Vivien's -3 to have our forest pseudo fight. I think bite is what it gets called. Bite the Herald of the Pantheon. Knocking that out and just delaying their plan. Our opponent plays a Temple of Plenty and scries 1, but then all they can do is play a Mana Bloom on 2, which doesn't seem too impressive, especially after all of the manner of threats that we just put out. We'll play a forest, we'll uptick our Vivien, we'll animate a forest, we'll swing in and get some points of damage. And then post-combat, we'll just play a very large Voracious Hydra, X equaling 9, and then doubling the number of counters on it for an 18-19 Hydra. That is certainly a very big boy. We pass it back over to our opponent, but they play a Temple Garden, and while deciding whether or not to shock themselves, realise that they can't overcome the power of our very big boy, and they decide to just concede. So match 2, a very quick one. Mostly won by sort of the mono-green devotion shell here. We didn't really do any tutoring, we just played a lot more mana's worth of stuff than they could. So going into match 3, we lose the die roll. Our opening hand is 3 forests, 2 Nykthos, a Vivien and a Jadelight Ranger. We decide to mulligan that because it just has too many lands, not enough action going on. But our 6 is arguably worse. 5 lands, a Wolfwillow Haven, Jadelight Ranger, and no Nykthos. But we managed to top deck a Vivien, and we kept that 6 just because, well, at least the Jadelight Ranger might be able to filter us towards some gas, and the Wolfwillow Haven is a little bit of a faster start. Anyway, and we didn't want to mulligan too hard. Going down to 5 is, almost a guaranteed loss, right? Our opponent leads on Thraben Inspector, followed by a Heart of Karn, so we know that they're on some kind of vehicles build. But the lands that they're playing, we see the full Jeskai colours, and I'm like, Jeskai vehicles? I don't really understand why you'd do that. The fact that they play a Thalia on turn 3 makes me think they're trying to emulate some kind of like 5-colour humans, but also with the vehicles stuff going on. I'm not fully sure. Anyway, our hand is shaping up to be 2 copies of Vivien, 2 copies of Wolfwillow Haven, and our Jadelight Ranger. So on turn 3 we were able to play a second Wolfwillow Haven, and play our Jadelight Ranger, revealing another Vivien on top. We definitely don't need 3 Viviens, so we put that into the grave, and that reveals a Nykthos for us. Passing back over to our opponent, and they play a Veteran Motorist. They take their Scry 2, and yeah, this whole vehicles theme is definitely starting to come together. That Thalia Heretic Cathar has definitely made things difficult for us. Any creatures that come into play are going to enter tapped. That's going to let them get in so much damage. So on their turn 4, they've hit us down to 5, and things are looking pretty dire. Doesn't seem like there's any way out of this one, and I'm fairly certain we're just going to concede here. Especially, you know, we play on Nykthos and it comes in tapped, and it's just like, oh, okay. There might have been a bit of a way around this. We could have played the Vivien first, then had her make Jadelight Ranger fight the Thalia, but then we wouldn't have had the mana to pay for the Nykthos activation anyway, so it's not like we could have done much more than that. So just, you know, our opponent had an aggressive start. They had this like disruption piece in Thalia that definitely did its job. So we lose game 1. You know, they were on the play, so they definitely deserve that win. We know what we're up against now though, so we're obviously not going to sideboard against it. That would be stupid. But we are going to, we know what we want to be mulliganing for. So we go into game 2. So in game 2, we're offered to be on the play, and our opening hand is 3 forests, a Nykthos trying to nix 2 Burning-Tree Emissaries and a Voracious Hydra. This seems pretty cool to me. Those Burning-Tree Emissaries, we can play 2 of them on turn 2. They're fantastic blockers. They get our devotion really high. We've got the Nykthos, and then Voracious Hydra is obviously great in creature-based matchups just by being able to fight. And with all this devotion that we're going to be able to get from our 2 copies of Burning-Tree Emissary, things are feeling pretty good. Our opponent mulligans to 6, which just, you know, sweetens the deal even more. So we lead on Forest and pass it over to them. They play a Sacred Foundry untapped, shocking themselves for 2, and play a Thraben Inspector, making a clue, passing it back to us. We draw Wolfwillow Haven, which is just fantastic. This means we can Burning-Tree Emissary into Burning-Tree Emissary into Wolfwillow Haven. We're going to have 5 devotion next turn, and one of our lands taps for 2 mana. That's really strong. So we pass it back over to them, and they play a Glacial Fortress, which comes in untapped, and they spend 2 mana to cast their Heart of Karn, but they don't have enough power on the board to be able to crew it, so we're not too concerned. We play our Nykthos, tap for a bunch of mana, and I believe we're actually just going to make a really big Hydra. Yeah, we just double the number of counters that's on it. The 1/2 Thraben Inspector doesn't bother us too much. It's not blocking these Burning-Tree Emissaries very effectively. It's not crewing the Heart of Karn. Chances are anything they play that could crew the Heart of Karn can crew it by itself. So that 1 power on the board really isn't bothering us. However, having an 8/9 Trample Voracious Hydra seems really good at getting through their defenses and blocking anything that's not flying. They play a Thraben Inspector and a Veteran Motorist, which means that they can now crew the Heart of Karn, and we can't block it, but if they do so, then they're not able to block us. They pass back to us, and we draw a Jadelight Ranger. So we start by going to combat and just swing with the Voracious Hydra, because the Burning-Tree Emissaries could be blocked by the Heart of Karn pretty profitably. They crew the Heart of Karn using the Veteran Motorist, and then chump block with it. I don't know if they know that the Voracious Hydra has trample, so we still deal 3 damage, or maybe they were aware of that and just didn't want to take the 8. Either way, we play our Jadelight Ranger using our Nykthos. That puts 2 more lands into our hand, 1 being a Nykthos, and so we just decided to use our 4 floating mana and 1 forest just to sack the Wolfwillow Haven, just to get that 2/2 wolf on the board. Might not be particularly relevant, but it's nice to have that little bit of extra power. Wolfwillow Haven, fantastic card. They play another land and then play a Heart of Karn after cracking a clue. It doesn't seem like they've gotten very far, so we just flunge in. Because our Voracious Hydra has trample, no matter how they block here, we're dealing lethal to them. Even if they assign all of their blockers to the Voracious Hydra, we still just get in for enough points of damage to kill them off. We go to game 3, once again, no sideboard. In game 3, our opponent naturally takes the play, so we'd really like to see a more interactive hand. but what we have is 2 Elvish Mystics, 2 Burning-Tree Emissaries, and 2 Wolfwillow Havens. It's not the most interactive hand in the world. In fact, there's pretty much no interaction whatsoever, but it is certainly a very fast hand. They lead on Bomat Courier and get in with a little 1/1, exiling a card underneath it. We lead on Forest into Llanowar Elves, drawing a Voracious Hydra, which is a fantastic draw. I don't think we could ask for much better than that. Maybe Vivien Arkbow Ranger. Either way, the ability to pick things off the board using the mountains of mana that we're going to have is pretty great. So here we can cast everything in our hand. We play Burning-Tree Emissary into Burning-Tree Emissary into Wolfwillow Haven into the other Elvish Mystic. This means that next turn, if both of our elves survive, we should have 6 mana available. So that's Voracious Hydra X equals 4. That's more than big enough to kill just about anything that we've seen out of their deck. They play a Veteran Motorist, which looks like Hydra food to me. They take their Scry 2, crew their Heart of Karn, and get in for 5 in the air. We draw a Jadelight Ranger, but that's not going to change our plan of casting a really big Voracious Hydra right now. So we cast that Voracious Hydra X equals 4, and we'll eat up the Veteran Motorist. There is an argument to taking the Bomat Courier, just to stop sort of some of their card advantage, but I think the Veteran Motorist is kind of what's hurting us more. It's the only thing that's able to crew that Heart of Karn, and this also allows us to get in for 4 points of damage with our Burning Trees this turn. Play another land and drop their Thalia Heretic Cathar. However, this time it's probably a bit too slow. We've already got our big Hydra out, but they are able to crew the Heart of Karn and get in for another 4 points of damage, bringing us down to 9. We draw a second Jadelight Ranger. Looks like Jadelight's back on the menu, boys. Drop the first one, it explores, revealing Vivien Arkbow Ranger. That seems pretty great, so we'll just keep that on top, and then we know exactly what we're doing with the second Jadelight Ranger as well. So we don't think that there's much way that they could hit us for an additional 5 points of damage, but just to be on the safe side, we do hold back our Burning-Tree Emissaries just in case they have a bunch of haste or something. They play a Toolcraft Exemplar, a Sacred Foundry coming in untapped, shocking themselves, a Thraben Inspector making a clue, and they go to combat using the buffed Toolcraft Exemplar to pilot their Heart of Karn and swing in with the heart. They almost go for a swing with the Bomat Courier and then decide not to, but that seems very strange to me. I feel like they should have went in with the Bomat Courier and then sacrificed it to get more card draw. Instead they just play another Thraben Inspector. I can't help but feel like 3 cards would have been better than 1 Thraben Inspector, but it doesn't really matter because we drop a Vivien Arkbow Ranger, use her +1 to put a +1/+1 counter on each of our Jadelight Rangers. This also gives them trample, and now the amount of trample damage that we've got, we're just going to swing in with everything. And once again, guaranteed lethal no matter how much they block, so fantastic stuff. So yeah, after much deliberation on how to block, they place some blocks and then go down to -2 or -4. Can't quite remember. Either way, it's a win against this sort of 3/4/5 color humans vehicles deck. It's a little janky, but it was in the 20 play points queue, so they did actually put sort of money on the line in order to play this, so I don't necessarily feel too bad about beating them. So there we have it, 3 matches with the deck and 3 match wins with the deck. So I hope that shows that as well as being very fun, this deck has some serious legs to be competitive in the format. I know Aspiring Spike 5-0'd at least 1 league with it. I'm not sure if they've recorded one of the 5-0 leagues that they've done or not, or if they did that on stream. But, you know, as I say, I think that shows it has some real potential in the format. I love the toolbox silver bullet style nature of the deck. I'm not saying like it has no bad matchups, but it does have that sort of mid-rangey control almost feel to it, where you don't feel like there's, you know, a matchup that you just can't do anything against. So I just finished editing together the rest of the video, and now I'm doing this little sort of outro thing, and it was a lot more effort than it normally would be to just kind of record something live and then throw it up on the internet. Maybe bad choice of words to say throwing it up on the internet, but either way, I hope that it made for an enjoyable video. Please do, as I say, let me know what you thought of it in the comment section below. Tell me if you like this style or you'd prefer to just hear my live thoughts, commentating sort of stream of consciousness style. I would really like to know what people want to see. And if you did like this video, please do consider leaving it a like, and please do consider subscribing and seeing more videos like this one. We're aiming for 1,000, we're almost there, so every little bit helps if you don't mind clicking that little button. But other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next one.